We also want to thank Annie over at Shake and Wake Radio. Annie, thank you so much for letting us be a part of the Shake and Wake Radio family. Thank you for letting us help keep your husband, Rick's memory and legacy alive. And thank you so much for being willing to help us reach people with the gospel of Jesus, the doctrine of Christ, and the stories that are that people can genuinely relate to but won't get in the churches. We could not do this without you, and we want to let you know that we love you so very, 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 very much. And so we just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do. And now that I've got this to successfully load,
yes,
guys, if you haven't done it already, please go check out truthradioshow.com. You're going to get unfiltered and unbiased news with Dan the Man Badandi. So head over there, subscribe, so that way you can get the world's news, and you're going to get it from a godly perspective. Because Dan is standing up to the New World Order. He's not afraid to get out there on the front lines because he has the Holy Spirit to back him. And the Bible says, if God is for us, who can be against us? If you're more of a morning person, hey, go check out the Cutting Edge YouTube channel with John Hall. You're also going to get unfiltered, unbiased news, and you're going to leave with a smile on your face, even in the darkest of times. So with that said, and with all of our wonderful friends and affiliates, I can't say thank you enough to all of them for their support, for their friendship, for their camaraderie. And now I'm going to pass it off to the person whose friendship and camaraderie and just, I love everything about her, but hey, I'll admit it, I'm biased. Sarah Harris, I need to fix it because it's still my name on the screen. But anyway, I'm going to pass it over to her and let her talk while I fix this.
First, am I muted?
No.
Okay. Now I can talk to you guys. We're, trying this again because he likes to press the shiny buttons and forgets that I'm muted, and then I'm just talking and you can't hear anything. But anyways, thanks for joining us, guys. And, real talk, as I said before in the other recording, we, have tried to record this before and we successfully, got all the way through it. But afterwards, just talking, me and God, I realized that it wasn't as clear and concise and eloquent as I wanted. And there were some things that I totally forgot that I wanted to talk about that I didn't get through. And I think part of it is because he's making a Superman pose back there. Part of it is because I had been taking care of my husband who got stung by 8 yellow jackets, or, in the adrenaline, not realizing that I had also been stung by yellow jackets trying to get them off of him. So we were a bit foggy, and we're going to try this again because this subject is too important for me to not give you everything that I possibly can on it. So today we're going to be talking about forgiving the unforgivable. And I use those quotes because even though things may seem like the worst of the worst of the worst that have possibly ever happened, the Bible gives us those guidelines as to what actually is unforgivable in the world. And what happens to us, person to person, or, person to self, that isn't it. That isn't the unforgivable. So we need those guidelines and that help, because while we know why we're supposed to forgive, and we're going to go over those verses too, how exactly to do it doesn't always come easily. When you're dealing with the people who have been infiltrated by the evil in this world, and they turn around and use that evil to do you harm or to do your loved ones harm in some way, forgiving them sometimes is the last thing you want to do on this earth, because your brain goes, they don't deserve it. I don't want to do it. Staying angry at them just feels better because it feels like what they deserve. And I've been there. I mean, we're going to talk a little real talk tonight, and I'm going to give you a little backstory about me. But it's not to toot my own horn, and it's not to say, hey, I've been through, worse than all of you, because I know there's some of you whose stories would, definitely make me cry all the tears. But just so that you can relate, so that you know that I'm not talking to you in a position of someone who's never been there before. And I think that's really important to help you relate, because sometimes if this information comes from somebody that you feel like doesn't know about how badly the evil can affect our lives, then it's harder to take. So the first thing we're going to go over is the why of forgiveness. Now, we know that we have a beautiful Savior that we love, that has forgiven us from some things only we and Him know about in our lives that we have done or thought about or, hidden away. And we are grateful for that every day. But when we try to apply that same forgiveness to a person who has done us wrong, we're like, why? Jesus, I'm sure, has forgiven them if they have asked for it. So why do I need to? And if you don't start with the why and you just try to start with the how and you miss that big step, it's going to be even harder because it feels fruitless and pointless, but it's not. So we're going to start in the book of Ephesians today, in verse 4, starting at verse 26. You ready for me?
Yep, it's already pulled up.
Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. Let him who stole steal no longer, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, that he may have something to give him who has need. Let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but what is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. And do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you, with all malice, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you. Now, I started as high up in this chapter as I did at verse 26 for a reason, because the first thing that it says after telling us, be angry and do not sin, do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. It is literally giving you a clear comparison between unforgiveness in your heart and a place for the devil. And if you give him that place, that's a foothold that he has in your life. You give him enough footholds and he's going to kick the door of your heart wide open. And then havoc will be wreaked. And we don't want that. Now, the important thing to understand here is it does say be angry and do not sin. No one is telling you that your anger towards the evil done to you or someone you love isn't justified. Because we see even in our Savior, when he walked the earth, that he was angry. He had justified anger, and he acted on it without sinning. We see, how many examples in the Old Testament where God himself was angry with his people and told them so. He was justified in his anger.
You can see it a lot just in the first few chapters of Ezekiel.
Oh, yes. Love the book of Ezekiel. Which I feel like I say that every time we talk about a book, but I love them all. Being angry is not the sin. It is okay to feel that anger. But Ephesians tells us not to let the sun go down on it. When you're angry about something, do not let it fester, because that's when you give the devil a place.
Just happened. Keep going.
Okay. But we need to take that anger and we need to deal with it right then and there. Every day that we leave it undealt with, we give place to the devil, which gives place to all of these things. In the other verses in Ephesians, it gives us wrath, clamor, evil speaking, bitterness, malice. And bitterness is one we know. Even when you're angry and you let it fester, at first it's, this hot fire of anger that you feel it so much so that like everything in you is shaking almost. if you leave it that way and you don't deal with it, eventually the hot fire goes out because, time has passed. But the bitterness is still there. Like, every time you see something associated to what caused you to be angry, you just start feeling bad or you get in a bad mood. That's the bitterness. And you start, just saying snappy things to the people around you. Just, you're not sure why. It's the bitterness that you let be there because you let that seed of anger take root. It's okay for us to feel the anger. It's okay for us to be mad. But letting it sit makes eventually our whole body and mind and soul corrupt. So when you're dealing with these people, first give yourself the permission to be angry. That is the first step on our how to forgive the unforgivable. Let yourself be angry. And if this happened years ago and it's this bitterness seed is already there, we're just going to take it and we're going to start fresh like it's the first day it happened. Because allowing ourselves the space to feel that is one of the most important steps. Give yourself some time while you're sitting there working through whatever it is. Allow yourself to be angry about it. You can list all the reasons that it hurt you or it was wrong or it hurt someone you loved and all the repercussions of that. Give yourself that space. It may take, a few minutes for you to feel that anger. It may take a couple hours, but the important thing is we're doing this in the span of a day. Don't try to take on all the unforgiveness in your life in a day. This is a process. But allow yourself to feel angry. Just like when we, go out there and sin willingly and knowingly, God himself is angry. Because what book is it in that it says every time we sin knowingly, it's like putting Jesus back on the cross?
I want to say that's the book of Hebrews.
Either way, I'm not a book chapter verse girl, but I know it's in there. But how angry would you be if, you gave forgiveness and somebody was just like, well, I'm going to do what I want anyway. I mean, I can't even process that anger when he gave his son for us. So he gives himself the space to be angry and then tells us, how to deal with it. Grace and mercy are new every morning. Why? Because the sun doesn't go down on that anger. And that is our model for how we should be. Now, before we go on to what to do next, I want to go to our next verse, which is in the book of Mark, so we can finish talking about the why of forgiveness. It's Mark 11, verse 25.
Just the one verse?
And 26.
Just a second.
Because this is an important one about prayer and forgiveness. Because if our prayer life isn't in good shape anyway, this is going to be a difficult process, okay? Just go ahead if you want like a cliff notes of what the next hour or so I'm going to be talking about is lots and lots and lots of prayer. Because you can't do this without him. In your own strength, you're going to fail. Because I tried it many times by myself. And here I am 26 and it's just been the last 2 years I've been on a journey of forgiving the people in my life. I can honestly look at you now and say, I've done it. I've forgiven them. But I would have told you that, 3 or 4 years ago too, not knowing that I still had seeds of bitterness inside of me. Ready?
Yeah.
And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses. You should read that verse and get very scared. I did. The only reason you shouldn't be is if you have honest to goodness forgiven everything. And I commend you on that. That is awesome. A wonderful, beautiful thing. If you have any unforgiveness, or if you read that with me and in your mind were like, I don't know if I have any unforgiveness, let it give you a good, healthy fear and respect for that right there. Enough to at least self-reflect and make sure that there is nothing. that you haven't forgiven. Now, when we come to God in prayer, it's like, imagine if there's a fence that you're trying to shout through, talking to him, and that fence is your unforgiveness. He hears you. He never doesn't hear you. But you are shouting through an 8-foot tall fence trying to get the message through. Because if you are asking for forgiveness about XYZ for yourself and you still have unforgiveness inside of you, he tells you point blank he will not forgive you because he's been wronged more than anybody. Imagine, what is there, like 7 trillion people on the planet?
Yeah, multiply that at least to the 6+ thousand years that we know about.
Exactly. I mean, there's just 7 trillion right now sinning actively right now this second.
Plus, you have to trace it all the way back to Adam. I mean, the very first person that ever lived.
He's been dealing with this and dealt with things a whole lot worse. I mean, because they were compiled on one another. It's breaking his heart every single day. And yet his grace and mercy are new every morning. That is our model for how to be. And I know the thoughts in your head because they cross mine. But you don't know what they did to me. And I've said that to myself when people would tell me, you just need to forgive. You need to forgive. You don't know what they did to me. Thinking that if they only knew how bad it was, that they wouldn't ask me to forgive. Because it felt better to hold on to my anger, because it felt like even though the justice hadn't been served to the people who did evil to me, I at least was feeling that anger. So somebody knew that it happened through me. And I think that's the biggest thing for unforgiveness is you feel like if there's no other justice in the world, the justice of my anger is enough. Which, when you reflect on that, is, putting yourself a lot bigger than you actually are. Because in the grand scheme of things, your anger is not affecting them. It's not. They have moved on. They have gone on with their life to do other things. And they left you in your sea of anger and unforgiveness and bitterness. Now, I want to take you, and before we finish talking about this, I want to take you to a lady. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the story. When I first heard it, it changed my life. And it was years and years and years ago, and I've never forgot it. It was a woman by the name of Elizabeth Smart. She was actually kidnapped from her home as a teenager and taken. She was gone for 9 months, and horrible, unspeakable things happened to her during that 9 months. And the reason that I want to bring you to this is because she gave a TED Talk. I don't even remember when it was because, like I said, I saw this years ago.
January 31st, 2014.
Ah, yeah. And so it probably was right when it came out when I saw it, because that sounds about right. I would have been, how old? Yeah. You
would have been a freshman in college.
Yep. That's when I saw it. Because TED Talks are something you just watch in college. Is that, oh, well, you didn't go, but is that just me?
I don't know. I was too ignorant to go.
You weren't too ignorant. He went to hair school, and he was a gifted cosmetologist, y'all.
I was too poor to go.
He was a gifted cosmetologist, and, he still is. He just didn't, I guess, want to go get his license or whatever, but he still cuts my hair. But anyways, sorry. Back to the point. I watched this in college, and it really changed me to know that this woman who had been taken away 9 months, and she was kept in the mountains by a man and woman, and like I said, horrible, unspeakable things happened. When she got home, her mother sat her down and gave her some advice that I have never forgotten. And we're going to give you this little 1-minute clip of this TED Talk. As soon as he pulls it up.
It's pulled up. I'm just waiting on it. There we
go. Advice, and I'd like to share it with you because, as I said, we all have trials in life. We all have those times when we don't want to get out of bed. My mom said to me, Elizabeth, what this man has done to you is terrible, and there are not words strong enough to describe how wicked and evil he is. He has stolen 9 months of your life that you will never get back. The best punishment you could ever give him is to be happy, is to move forward with your life, because by feeling sorry for yourself and holding on to the past and dwelling on what's happened to you, that's only allowing them more control, more power, steal more of your life away from you. So don't let that happen. Justice may or may not be served. Restitution may or may not be made, but don't you dare give them another second of your life.
Right there. How powerful is that, huh? When you think about the fact that your anger is giving that person more control and a foothold in your life where there is room for Jesus, and you're not giving it to him, it changes the whole perspective of things. It changes it. Because you went from us thinking that our anger is some sort of justice that we're giving them here on earth because, oh, if anybody ever asks me, they'll know that that person, that's a bad person, that's an evil person, to they consume your thoughts. They consume your peace and your joy. Because yes, it does affect your joy, because our joy comes from the Lord and him alone. But like I said, when you have unforgiveness, there's a fence between you and him. And he tells us as such in Mark, that you can't get to him all the way with that unforgiveness in the way. But to listen to this woman who had terrible things done to her. Terrible. I mean, imagine being taken out of your bed and for 9 months you didn't see your family. You didn't see your home. You didn't know where you were. And there were people doing whatever they wanted to you. And she came home and her mother looked at her. I mean, what strength and what a wonderful mother. Acknowledged. She gave her that room to be angry. Told her they were evil people. They had done unspeakable things. And said justice may or may not be served, because on this earth, it may or may not be served to the people that have wronged you. We know it will in heaven, though. At the end of their life, they will face the judgment.
That reminds me of Psalm 73.
Oh, go ahead, tell us about it. Pull it up if you want. We'll go there with you.
All right, well, let's go there. Why not? All right.
Psalms. That's 86. I'm almost there. There it is. Psalm 73. The tragedy of the wicked and the blessedness of trusting God.
Yes. Asaph says, truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. They are corrupt, and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And they say, how doth God know? And is there any knowledge in the Most High? Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. Verily I have cleansed my heart in vain, and washed my hands in innocency. For all the day long I have been plagued and chastened every morning. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then understood I their end. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation as in a moment? They are utterly consumed with terrors. As a dream when one awaketh, so, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins. So foolish was I and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee. Nevertheless, I am continuously with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon the earth that I desire beside thee. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all of them that go a-whoring from thee. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I have put my trust in the Lord God, that I may declare all thy works.
What more do you need than that? What more justice do you think you can serve in your earthly anger than that? That is the promise right there. That is the promise that the evil that is done to you, if it goes to the other side unrepentant, uncaring, God deals with it.
Not only that, but you're in the same boat at that point as the person to whom you are holding all the unforgiveness.
Exactly.
To.
I mean, do you want that to happen to you? That's where unforgiveness gets you. Mm-hmm. That is where it gets you. I can't mince words with this.
And Asaph said, I mean, you could clearly tell at the front of that, he's holding some bitterness and unforgiveness.
Oh, yeah. He said, my feet almost stumbled.
When he went into the sanctuary, he said, I was as a beast before. He was ignorant, and he was as a beast before the Lord.
I mean,
now keep that in mind, because who comes in the end times?
Mm-hmm, the beast.
The beast.
I mean, you have to stop and ask yourself why the unforgiveness feels so good. Why does it feel so good? Because the devil wants it that way. The enemy wants it to feel good. If it felt bad, everybody would just forgive and move on. But he wants that stumbling block beneath your feet. He wants you to not be able to move on and to not be able to grow. You can't grow in God if there's unforgiveness in you. You can't. You'll stay on the milk as long as you can't forgive. And I didn't even realize I was still on the milk until the forgiveness started happening. Trey and I had a system because I have dealt with a lot that needed forgiving in my life. To the smallest moments, to the biggest moments. I mean, the tiniest little things. Like, I mean, I'll share one with you that it was so minuscule, I didn't even realize it was pulling on my heart. When I was younger, you have pizza nights, your family orders pizza. And everybody in my house liked their pizza the same way, with light sauce and, certain toppings. I don't even remember what they were. I think it was, it had something to do with pineapples, because pineapples on pizza is weird, guys. I still love you if you put your pineapples on pizza. I just, I'm going to get you your own pizza if you ever come to my house.
Pineapple on pizza is delicious.
Yeah, see, even in marriages, it divides. But I really love extra sauce on my pizza. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. But because I was the only one, I was never allowed to get it on my pizza. It seems small and trivial, right? I mean, very trivial. Didn't even realize that in my heart, I was still like, every time we ordered pizza, as a married person, like, I would feel that in my heart. Like, I was so bitter about pizza.
No, and like, she would, like, anytime, because... So there is a very popular pizza franchise.
Yeah, we can't say the name, but they're popular.
But just know that, when bad things happen, it's like somebody knocked the stack of them over.
Yeah.
But we went to school with the people that owned it. So like we were constantly ordering from there. Yeah. And she would always ask, is it okay? Do you mind if we get extra sauce on the pizza? And like so timid.
Yes, I was small and mousy.
You still are.
I am, but when I want something, I can get loud.
Now, that's how you need to speak into that microphone. Like
hello.
So,
he tells me all the time I'm soft spoken, but
I have to process her microphone to where it'll pick up her.
He has to literally put
soft-spokenness.
it on the tenacity of like a ladybug. Like, that's how soft I am. But you can hear me, right? I mean, you can't tell me, obviously, because you're not watching this yet. Because it's...
Except for you, NSA. We know you're watching.
Anyways, it was a big thing when we got married about pizza. Because every time I was like, I really get to get extra sauce on my pizza? And he's like, yeah, why wouldn't you? Because it was just a thing that had planted bitterness in me and I didn't even know it. So we have a system. Every time a memory like that from my childhood comes up, I talk to him about it. I tell him it. We're riding down the car. Or it's the middle of the night, or we're sitting at breakfast. It pops in my head. I tell it to him.
Which only happens one day a week, unfortunately.
I tell it to him. And I give myself that space to be angry about it. And like we talk about it, the injustice of whatever it is for a minute, even down to the pizza sauce. I'm like, who does that? Why couldn't I just get my own little small pizza? I gave myself the space to be angry.
It's because you're Cinderella.
Like I said, it hasn't been easy growing up, but I processed it. And then I let it go. Because he allows me to have that space to act like it's a fresh event, to feel the anger of it or the bitterness of it. And then I can let it go. And it's such a beautiful moment when it happens. Sometimes it's, I'll be in the shower and I'll just, be thinking in the shower and I'll peek my head out and like, did I tell you about this one time that this and this and this happened? Like, that's crazy, right? Like, that's so unfair that happened. I mean, I've had to process a lot of those little moments, but it shows you how small the seed of bitterness can be and still take root in you and you not even know. I mean, granted, we're dealing with some big, heavy stuff that can happen to people. I know. Excuse me, I've got indigestion. I know how big and horrible.
Too much pizza sauce.
Stop it. See what he does to me? He's mean. But it's okay. I'm not going to let the sun go down on that. I'm going to forgive you right now.
But isn't the sun down?
I mean, tomorrow's sun. It's after midnight. It's a new day. Grace and mercy are here for me right now.
Touché.
Yeah, they started like an hour ago.
I'm
Fresh
not
and
mean.
new.
I just joke a lot.
He's mean. What was I talking about? Oh, I know how big. I know how big the things can be that affect you. I mean, I know of the most evil and corrupt things that can happen, whether it be physically, mentally, spiritually, or politically, that somebody has changed your life for the worse. I know. But if you don't start with this small stuff, you're not going to be able to tackle that big stuff. You're not going to be able to do any of it without God. But you got to start with that small stuff, that little nagging feeling that says, gosh, I can't believe that person did that to me. Because if you're still having that thought, you haven't forgiven them. That's just the hard truth of it. Now, moving on to the bigger stuff, a step above pizza sauce that can affect us. It's not the huge stuff yet, but it's bigger. And we're still dealing with things that have been done to us by other people. Because later on, we're going to get to things you have done to yourself, which is where I'm going to share a little bit about me with you. But we're still going to focus on right now the bigger stuff that person or people can do to you that affects you in a way you don't even know, that changes your whole outlook of the world, that changes your outlook on yourself, that changes your relationships with other people for the rest of your life. As far as for you married people, you ever, look at your husband or your wife and they do something and it reminds you of something that's been done to you in a past relationship and you get angry at them all of a sudden and you're not sure why? It's because there's unforgiveness from those other relationships. If you have had relationships, even if they weren't physical relationships, they were just, middle school stuff or high school stuff, and you're still feeling that and you're projecting it on your spouse, there's unforgiveness there. And it causes a lot of divorces, guys. It causes a lot of people needed marriage counseling. I mean, it's happened in our relationship. I mean, we're not going to put up a veil with you guys. It's happened. We've worked through it now, but it has happened where he'll say something, that sounds like, I mean, even it doesn't even have to be a past relationship. It sounds like stuff that, my father has said. And even if he didn't mean it that way, or what he said wasn't even all that bad, but because it reminded me of my father, it made me mad. I mean, it made me angry with him, and I would stop speaking or get grumpy or start fussing and yelling because I had unforgiveness towards that other situation, and I put it on him like it was his burden to bear, and that's not fair. It's not. And I had to realize that my anger wasn't towards him or what he had done. That my anger was towards that situation that it reminded me of. You ever heard, I'm sure you have in this day and age, I'm triggered. It was a trigger, and he pushed the trigger. He didn't even know he did it. And I'm sure, I've done things like that to you. But it happens a lot. For instance, I'm trying to think of what happened. It wasn't but like a month ago. Oh, because we were just dealing with this. He said something that I had done, or like an idea I had. He was like, "That's dumb." And the idea, yeah, the idea was dumb. But because I had come up in a situation where I had been made to feel like I was literally going crazy, like it triggered me. And I had a nice good breakdown about it. I mean, it was compiling on all the other times he would just innocently say, "That's dumb," or "That's annoying," or, "That's crazy."
That's crazy talk is a big one.
Yeah, the crazy talk. It put on me where I had been made to feel that way before, and immediately my defenses went up. I said, I'm not going to be made to feel that way anymore.
But that's why.
But before I talked to him about it, I was internally saying that, and it projected onto him, and then he was dealing with a grumpy, angry wife and didn't know why, which made him grumpy, angry, and then we just started fussing back at each other. And one day, I just,
I've got bigger grump and bigger anger, too.
Well, yeah, you're a man. They all do. Sorry. That was sexist of me. Sorry. But
what a bigot.
Stay over there. He's across the desk. I'm going to throw something at him. See, I just got to let it go. But one day I was on the phone with him, and, he said something again that just, it scratched that itch. It pushed that trigger. And finally I just broke down crying, and I told him how it had been making me feel like those little comments over the last 6 months that had become increasing, and he didn't even realize he was doing it, was making me feel like I was losing my mind because I had been made to feel that way by past relationships and by people in my life that, were there when I was growing up and when I was younger. And I had been made to feel, I've been told all my life, you've got book sense, no common sense. Because, I could, quote facts and things from books. But as far as processing a situation and understanding the best thing to do, I didn't know. Why? Because I was 8, 9, 10 years old.
And nobody told you.
Nobody told me. Nobody had ever taught me.
We have to explain things to children. That's kind of our responsibility
as
parents. But
instead, I had been told I got book sense, no common sense. So, and then other little comments here and there. It made me feel like there was something defective in my brain, like I had been fundamentally made wrong, so I had no choice but to be crazy. And so his comments, I put all that on him. And if you find yourself dealing with your spouse and you're angry at them for something that seems small, when you go back and reflect on it, it's pulling unforgiveness from somewhere else and it's projecting it onto that person, which is not only not fair to them, it's not fair to you. It's not. You are making yourself feel miserable because you haven't reflected enough on your past to find those seeds of bitterness and to dig them out. I mean, get a trowel, get down in the dirt, the nitty gritty of your life, dig out those seeds. They don't need to be there anymore. They probably have roots that extend all the way from your head to your toes. Dig them out anyway. It's going to be painful. It's going to hurt. and it's going to take a lot of mental energy. But as long as you are praying about it and asking for him to soften your heart and asking for him to be with you through the process, asking him to reveal what you need to deal with, you can't fail, because it's his forgiveness coming through you to that person. So after I had my little breakdown on the phone with him and I was telling him why, and he realized that he needed to watch how he dealt with me because I was softer in that area.
Well, see, that's what I was going to say. That's why it's important that, you know, it's like Paul says in 2 Corinthians, you have to hold every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. And that's the best way that I can say practically of how we speak life is we have to think before we speak.
And that's a big thing for him.
I'm bad. Like, you
ain't got to tell them. It comes out.
You ain't got to tell them. They've heard.
Oh, yeah. Y'all probably saw. I had to get on him for a comment he told me he made in a podcast not long ago where he said something. What was it about ditch diggers?
I said that pastors that didn't preach the whole word needed to go dig ditches, and inadvertently insulted ditch diggers by saying that.
Yeah, because of something about that was all they were worth, implying that if they were a good pastor, they'd be worth more than a ditch digger, which isn't what he meant.
Right, which isn't what I meant, seeing as I used to dig ditches.
He let his anger and his fervor towards the way that pastors are leading their sheep astray affect him to the point he didn't think before he spoke. And he didn't mean anything against it. I mean, he didn't, but I had to tell him, people are going to take it that way. And you need to respect that they're going to be softer in that area, some of them, because they might dig ditches for a living or do some other manual labor, and it would make them feel tedious, like pastors are worth more. Now, teachers...
Which they're not.
Teachers aren't worth more, but they are held more accountable. Biblically, they are. So, being harsh with them is something that needs to happen. But it needs to happen eloquently.
And not insulting other people.
Just an example of, you know, how that seed of bitterness, because of things that have been done to him and to us in the modern church and by pastors, led to a seed of bitterness that came out when he said something else. He projected it. And, you know, as his wife, as his other half, I had to check him on that, just like he checks me on it when stuff like that happens to me. Like, I will put certain things on all men because of things that men have done to me. Or I will put it on all... I really have a thing about parenting. And, like, I'll see a mother or a father do something to their child, like, you know, deal with them harshly in a way, and it just bugs me and it nags at me. And, you know, I'll say, oh, they probably do this, this, and this too. How can they do that? And I have to step back and say, I don't know what's going on. I probably just caught them in a bad moment, you know, walking through, you know, the store or something, and just see it happen. And I'm judging their whole parenting style on that.
Well, not to mention the fact that God has humbled both of us because we both grew up in those houses when we saw the kid throwing the temper tantrum.
Oh, yeah.
In Walmart, man. Like, man, those people need to parent their kids. And now we're the parents of those kids.
Yeah, I mean, it'll teach you some
kids,
stuff.
Man, they throw they don't care. The more people, the better for them.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I have been the one, I've had to take my child, you know, out of the cart and sit on the floor of the store and just cradle them and rock them because I have an autistic child, and going in the store was something that overwhelmed her.
Still does.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't even take her in the store anymore unless it's absolutely necessary. I drop her off, you know, with Mimi around the corner for a while I go in the store because it overstimulates her so badly. But, you know, before I figured that out, she would just cry and scream and yell, and I would have to take her out of the cart and put her in my arms and sit on the floor in front of everybody and just rock her and, you know, talk sweetly to her, or, you know, give her a little space, like maybe put a blanket over her head and my head so that she could see me, but she couldn't see anything else, just to calm her. But I remember this one time very vividly when I was pregnant with my second child, and I had to take Meredith to the OB appointments with me. I am very against personal screen time for kids. I really am. Like, you know, tablets, you know, if they're at home and they just sit in front of a tablet like this and watch videos, or, you know, they watch your phone while they're in the cart at the store the whole time. I'm very against that because, number one, it doesn't teach them how to deal with those situations.
Teaches them to become emotionally stunted and numb.
It teaches them to numb themselves out whenever there's something to deal with. So I'm very against it for a full-time thing. Like if the whole time you're out in the car or in the store or even at home when you're doing something, they're in front of a screen so that they don't, you know, be loud or, you know, wiggle or whatever you're trying to stop them from doing. I'm very against that. And, you know, I won't make any excuses or apologies for that because even scientifically they tell you it's bad for them. But I remember this one time.
Yeah, and those are the people that think we come from monkeys, and even they know that.
I was with Meredith at the OB, very pregnant. I was due in like a month. Okay, I was huge. And I was waiting for the OB to call me back for my turn. And so I was sitting in the waiting room with a 2-year-old. I mean, yeah, she had to have been 2 already because they're 18 days apart. So she was almost 2, I guess. And she was, you know, getting up and down in all the chairs, and I was walking behind her, you know, and we were playing the, you know, sit in this chair, what color is this chair, you know, or I would read her a book or a magazine, and it took them about 45 minutes to call me back. I mean, it was a ridiculously long wait. And about 35 minutes of that, her and I were playing, but then my feet started to swell, my ankles started to hurt, and I was like, I really just want to sit and wait and rest because I'm hurting. And so after 35 minutes of play, I sat her down. I said, would you like to, you know, watch something on my phone with me? And I turned on a little video. I don't even remember what it was.
It was the duck song.
Oh, yeah, the duck song. And I watched it with her. I didn't just give it to her and leave her be. You know, I held the phone and I sat with her and we watched it. And this little old lady comes by on her walker, you know, right as that happened. I mean, she didn't see the first 35 minutes. She walked in when I had started the video. And she had somebody with her, like a little home health nurse or something. And she sneered at me and made an ugly face. And she said, back in my day, we didn't have screens to give to our children. We just parented them. And it broke me. It really did. I started bawling and crying because I felt like I'd failed as a parent. Because she walked in on a moment and judged everything she saw based on that one moment. Everything about me was that one moment. She didn't see the 35 minutes that we were playing up and down in the chairs or playing patty cake or reading the books. She didn't see that. And a lot of that is seeds of bitterness that were inside her and unforgiveness based on, I'm not sure what it was. It could have been the way she was parented.
It could be something as simple as she has a daughter that does that with her kid. Yeah. And it drives her nuts.
Yeah.
Because she's trying to spend time with her grandkid and her grandkid just wants to watch the phone the whole time. There's no human interaction. I could see how that can make an old person, especially if it's an old person that never gets out of their house. You know, I deal with a lot of those. Yeah. And I see them. They're starving for attention. Like I said, Dustin had a guy, and I've been to this guy's house, nicest guy in the world. He's like a 92-year-old black man. Like just the nicest guy in the world.
That's a beautiful life.
I'm telling you, he's got some of the best stories. And all you would do at his house is you would go, he'd pour you a cup of coffee, and he would just tell you about the world, how the world was when he was a kid versus now.
I would love that.
Great stories. But think about it. You take a situation like that where a person is by themselves, they have nobody to talk to, and then when they see their grandkid, which is like, you know, for every grandparent, it's the grandkid. Like
most grandparents.
Well, yeah. Well, we're not going to get into that. But, and then this is what you look forward to, and then
they're like this the whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, like this.
I could see how that could make somebody bitter.
And she projected that on me, and it broke me. I mean, you don't realize how much stuff like that can break somebody when you project your own seeds of bitterness and anger onto them. So forgiveness is important not only for the person you're forgiving or for you, it's important to the other people you interact with, where you can take that bitterness and project it onto them, and all of a sudden it's their fault. And everything that's done wrong to you is on that person you probably never met before. That's what bitterness does to you. it causes all these other things that we read about in Ephesians, wrath and malice and evil words, evil speaking. It causes all those things. It starts with those bitter seeds that were once a red hot, fiery anger that over time the fire went out, but that seed is still there. It's all caused by that. And you ask, I keep telling you to dig them out. And, I've given a few steps on how to do that, but to give you a little bit more, we've talked about, giving yourself the space to be angry, which is so important. Even if it's been years and years and years ago, even if it's your first memory in life, like your first memory in life is when you were like, what, 3? 3 or 4?
I can
He has
remember
an elephant memory.
I can remember back to moments when I was 2.
Even if it was then, give yourself the space to be angry for that. And then let it go. And how do we let it go? We process it. We talk about it with someone that we trust, whether it be your spouse, your friend, a therapist, or just God. I mean, if that's all you have more than you ever need anyway.
Here's a verse that I think goes hand in hand with everything we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof."
I love that. I mean, what you speak to other
Just
people.
remember, if you talk, you know what? You're going to eat it.
Yeah. What you say to people can affect them more than you ever know. Like that woman. I mean, my second child is 3 years old now, over 3. And I'm remembering that moment specifically in my life that happened when I was pregnant with her that affected me that much. I'm not bitter about it, and I'm not holding unforgiveness about it. It affected me and the way that I parent and the way that I look. It changed me for the better because now I've learned how much it can hurt to judge based on one moment you see because of your own projections. Whether you do it to your spouse, whether you do it to your kids, it's your fault. I have to look you in the metaphorical eyes and tell you it's your fault. If you are projecting onto them and holding them accountable for what someone else has done to you, it's your fault. It's your own unforgiveness. So first, give yourself that space to heal from that moment and then go and ask for forgiveness for who you projected it on. It's so important because until you do, that fence between you and God is not going to be taken down. He can knock it down in 1 second, like flick it with his finger and it's gone. But he tells us in Mark, he's not going to do it unless you forgive first. He's not going to give you the forgiveness that is freely yours unless you have forgiven already. Let that give you enough pause to take what I'm saying and truly reflect on your entire life and find those seeds and dig them out.
And pray, ask God to reveal them to you because you're not going to remember all of them.
No.
And what's weird is they pop up at the strangest times. So
God has given me dreams before of moments.
Let's bring up this one because it's already come up once today. Mm-hmm. After we left Eastgate, oh man, I was so mad. And I still have moments where I just get so angry. Yeah. Because the way
they did him wrong.
I was treated on that last day,
they did him wrong.
I mean, but you know what? I asked for it. I literally prayed and said, God, if it's time for me to leave, let this exact scenario happen.
Yep.
And that exact scenario happened. But I had to text. I mean, one day I was like, Father, please, just any resentment or bitterness that I'm holding on to anything or anything that I need to apologize for, let me. And I remember waking up and telling you, I was like, I have to text Jonathan and just, touch base, apologize and ask for forgiveness. And, I did the asking for forgiveness part. Yeah. Like for me, I'm not entirely sure I forgave at that moment though.
Right.
Because I still get
If you think upon the situation later and your brain's like, I cannot believe they did that to me, there's unforgiveness there. And I mean, it can be as simple as...
Well, and for me, let me clarify, because for me, it's not, I can't believe they did that to me. It's, I can't believe that there wasn't more that I did to help everybody else. Yeah. There's a lot of unforgiveness for me, which I know is going to segue right perfectly into the next thing you need to talk about.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But to end this part of forgiving others, one helpful step that I have found is that if you can't do anything else after prayer and talking with God to soften your heart and to reveal these moments, and the moments have come up and you have given yourself the space to be angry, and then you're like, where do I go from here? I've hit a wall. How do I get to the next part of this forgiveness? Say it out loud. That person just say in your mind, just say their name and say, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. Even if your heart's not there yet, let your brain be there.
And understand, forgiveness isn't for letting them heal. Nope. Forgiveness is for healing you.
Mm-hmm.
There was a person who was instrumental in our transition out of the church. It is a very prominent, if I said the person's name, many of you would know who I was talking about. And they had a story about how when their life fell apart and they were done wrong, they were in counseling for it. And the counselor told them, he was like, all right, it's time to forgive. And they were like, you know what? I'm not ready. They were like, all right, that's fine. I want you go over there to the corner, take your chair and hold it above your head, and I'll come get you when I'm ready. And everybody else did their thing, and he came over and he told him, he was like, hey, look, how you feeling right now? And he's like, how's it going with the chair? He's like, it hurts. And he was like, think about all the unforgiveness that you're holding on to and what it is doing to you on the inside. The unforgiveness that you are holding inside is killing you slowly and surely. Think of it reminds me of, and this is probably a horrible example. But do you remember on the show Once Upon a Time how Snow White had a pure heart in that? But every time she did something that was either hate-fueled or bitterness-fueled, her heart would turn, it would get a little more black.
Yeah.
The reason I pull that up is because in a metaphorical sense, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Blackness is taking you over. And you may not be able to see it physically.
You can feel it, though.
But the Father can see it.
Mm-hmm.
And all the devils that are just looking to get a foothold into your life, they can see it. And when you let your heart get black like that, you're giving the devils a foothold.
And
like
make
no mistake,
you give enough footholds, they're going to kick the door of your heart wide open.
Right. Whether you've become born again or not, the devils will get an opportunity to oppress and possess you if you let them.
Don't think that they're not going to use anything they can to keep you from doing the work of God, because they will. Now, we've talked about now, I think, sufficiently forgiving people for what they do to wrong you. And if there's a situation that you want to talk about privately that you feel like you need more help with the forgiveness process, feel free to email the page, or, find Trey's Facebook and message and just direct it at me or direct it at him. And, we'll deal with that one-on-one. I'm not going to leave you alone in this process, because I remember going through it and I know how hard it is. So feel free, if there's a situation where you're like, I don't know how to deal with this because it was so evil and so bad, go ahead and message me. We'll work through it. I'll make sure he puts the email link or in the description later. And
I'm about to put it on screen.
Okay, perfect. But feel free to do that, and just, if you don't want him reading it because it's a woman-to-woman thing, just put my name in the subject, and he won't read it, and I'll read it, and I'll email back. so that we can deal with this together, because it takes a village and we're not alone. We are the body of Christ. We are all the parts working together to make a beautiful whole, to do his work. And I'm not going to leave you alone in that. Go ahead. Or, if you feel like you want to talk about it publicly, you just want to put it in the comments on this video, go ahead with that too. I'll find it wherever you put it and we'll deal with it together. But the next part that I want to deal with is forgiveness toward yourself, which a lot of people feel like when they've changed their life, that's it, that they don't have to deal with how they felt anymore towards themselves. But if you have ever dealt with self-hatred, self-loathing, you have to process that. Even after you feel better about yourself, you have to go back and forgive you for that. It's such an important step in growing in what God wants you to do. So now we're going to I'm going to share some personal things with you about me, just because I feel like it'll help you know that I can relate to the worst of the worst self-loathing, and just to show you how I dealt with specifically what I did to hate myself. And then only because God the Father himself told me to, I have a bit of poetry that I wrote in my healing process that I'm going to read to you at the end of this. Not because I don't want to share it with y'all. It's just I'm not a very good poet. I'm not a very eloquent poet. I do it just for my own healing. But for some reason, this one, God said, share it. So I'm going to be an obedient daughter. So a lot of times, either because of the way we're raised or because of things we do, the hatred and the anger, we put it on ourselves. And it comes across in the smallest of moments, when you've done something like you broke a dish, or, you yelled at someone and you're like, gosh, you're so stupid. Talking to yourself, you're so dumb. That was crazy. How could you be so dumb? That's self-loathing and self-hatred, guys. I mean, sometimes we've honestly done something dumb, but calling ourselves dumb, that's okay. Calling ourselves dumb, that's hatred on ourselves. And we need to realize that means that there's unforgiveness towards us for what we've done. Now, some of you might think that if you've done something towards someone and you've offended them or hurt them in some way and they haven't forgiven you, that what right do you have to forgive yourself? Like, almost like it's selfish to say, well, I've forgiven me for that, so, you deal with your own unforgiveness over there. But why is that selfish? As long as you have followed the biblical route to ask for forgiveness from that person and done right by them and restored, just like the law tells us, if you steal, oxen, sheep from somebody, and then you have to restore it so many times, and that's how you ask for forgiveness. So as long as whoever you have wronged, you have truly asked for forgiveness and you have restored how you need to biblically through the law that shows us exactly what to do. Granted, it's not going to be sheep or oxen, probably. It is. As long as you've done that and you've found a way to restore, then if they don't forgive you, that's on them. They have to deal with that anger and bitterness. All you can do is move on, and then you have to forgive you. Now, I probably, hold one of the top prizes in self-loathing. I can remember as far back as a 6-year-old that I started to hate myself. I became a people pleaser because I thought I hate myself so much that if people feel even a fraction of this hatred that I do for myself, for me, that they're going to lock me away. My fear as a 6-year-old was that I was going to be locked in a mental facility. Like I said, because I've been, made to feel like I was crazy, or that my brain didn't work right for some reason. And that was my vivid fear. At 6 years old, I started hating myself. And that hatred only grew with every passing year. I remember at 8 years old, and this is something that we laugh about now. At 8 years old, I was afraid for a long time to eat or drink because I was afraid that somebody had poisoned my food or my drink, and that I would eat it and I would die because that, of course, they want to be rid of me. You know, they hate me. They obviously have to because I hate myself that much. And so I went a long time. I got down to a very, very, very thin 8-year-old because I didn't eat or drink for a long time. I ate and drank very minimally, or, you know, I only ate or drank if I saw it come from the store and I opened it myself because I was afraid someone was trying to poison me. You know, even at the school cafeteria, they're trying to poison me. You know, paranoia was a lot of it because of things growing up, you know, when I was younger, being taken away from my home by family members, you know, and not knowing what was that unsurety. It made me very paranoid. I mean, to this day, I sometimes deal with that. Yeah, especially at night. Because that's when I remember the memory of being taken. I remember it being dark outside, and I was so unsure and I was so scared. And that led to a big fear of the night. But that paranoia projected itself and it amplified onto everything to the point where I thought someone was literally out to get me. And that hatred, it never really went away. It changed form a lot, but it never really went away. To the point, you know, I was in middle school. I was 13 years old. 13 was a big year for me. You think, oh, you're a teenager, you know, life is starting to get really cool at 13, you know, you're growing up, you got more responsibilities, but 13 was a year that changed me for the worse, because at 13, I realized that I could project that self-hatred onto me in a way that felt really good. I started self-harm in a lot of different ways. You know, cutting, pulling my hair out. I used to, I started it for a little bit. I would actually take like lighters or stuff and try to like burn myself. But I realized very quickly that that was hard to hide. But cutting was my thing. It really was. At 13 years old was the first time I did it. And I can't even describe to you what I felt, because I felt so dirty and so bad for doing it, but I liked it so much because finally it felt like I was getting mine. I was getting what I deserved because I was so hated that finally justice was being served because I was being hurt for how much I hurt others just by existing. My existence felt like such a nuisance to everyone around me that I had to punish myself for being alive. Like I said, I could win a trophy in self-loathing and self-hatred. But it got to the point where, and this is for all of you out there who may be dealing with somebody in your life that you don't know is harming themselves, just as a public service announcement. At 13 years old, where I would cut myself was in the shower. And so I started trying to fight it so hard, the temptation. So, you know, obviously, you know, in the mornings I would like, you know, take a rag and wet it and like wash myself at the sink. But I avoided the shower to the point where, you know, my family members were making fun of me and telling me I like to be dirty or that I like to be smelly. Even though I didn't smell, I promise, you know, I made sure I was clean. But I knew if I got in that shower, I would be in there for 1 or 2 hours. And I knew what I was going to do. But nobody reached out. Nobody thought something must be wrong because she's avoiding the shower. They made fun of me and they ridiculed me badly. My family members, my friends. But they had no idea what was going on and I didn't have the strength to tell them. I started trying to leave subtle clues like, you know, 95, 100-degree weather and I was wearing long sleeves. Nobody cared. They made fun of me for that too. That's a public service announcement for anybody acting weird in your life. Take a moment and think what's going on that they don't want you to know about. They might not be ready to talk about it. Don't try to drag that out of them, but try to be the voice in the wilderness. Try to let God's voice and his heart for them reflect through you. Love them like Jesus does so that they can feel that, because I can guarantee they feel very alone. But anyways, back to my story, a little bit of it. The reasons I did this, I have to leave most of them secret because a lot of them were done by people who have not forgiven themselves. And it's not my story to tell. But I can tell you what I did. I just, can't tell you all the reasons why. But like I said, my hatred started at 6 years old. But now we're up to 13-year-old Sarah being ridiculed at school, being ridiculed at home because I didn't want to take a shower. I had scars everywhere. And obviously nobody saw them. To this day, there's actually right here on my wrist, there's a little white. I'm not going to show it to him. I'm just, there's this little white scar on my wrist. Every other scar that I have, except for some that you can see when I turn my wrist the right way, like you can see the indent marks where the scars were, everyone has went away. They're not visible, like I said, unless I turn the right way. They're gone. That's God's grace, guys. I'm so thankful for that I don't have to hold that and carry that with me. But I have this little one right here on my wrist. And I remember the day that it happened. And I remember what happened that caused it. And I remember that was the first time that I had ever tried to end my life with what I did. And it was big when I did it. I mean, like, it started where I see it and it went all the way down, and I'm not going to get too graphic, but I remember it. But all that's left is this one little 1/4 of an inch scar right here. And I think God left that for me so that I never forget where I came from, and I never forget how hard it was and how much he has let heal from me that I don't have to look at anymore. But when I look at this, I see it and I remember, and I feel for all the people still going through that. And that is, it's my witness to them. I've never shared this story before right now, and I'm choosing to share it where so many people are going to see it, because I always thought people would think less of me. And you may think less of me, I don't know, but I got to do what God told me. When I met my husband, I was 16. I was in the throes. This was something I did almost every night. I had a boyfriend at the time who didn't even know. And yet, I told him. We became best friends like shortly after we met, probably like 75 seconds after I met him. He was my best friend in the whole world. And I told him. I was like, my mentality was, if I told him because we had become friends, if he was going to leave, he might as well do it now. If he was going to think me dirty and hate me like everybody else did, he might as well do it right now so that I don't get too attached, because I was already feeling myself get attached. Had a boyfriend, he didn't know about it until later. I did tell him later. But I'm not going to, bring that up. But I told him. And you know what he did, guys? He hugged me. And he told me I was beautiful. And he told me that I was a good person. And it wasn't, a month and a half later, maybe, he told me he loved me. Like, not just friend love, that he loved me. And he never went away, guys. Like, I can't get rid of him. He's still here. I did everything I could to get rid of him, and he's still right here. And I'm so thankful for that. He knew what I was. He knew what I was doing. He loved me exactly where I was. And he let me grow from that. Instead of trying to fix me, trying to change me, he showed me the love that Jesus had for me through him. He loved me exactly where I was. and he comforted me when I needed. And that was the strength that I needed to get through. And I'm going to be open and honest with you. The last time I've tried to end my life over 40 times, not going to mince words about it. And they all happened in the span of from 13 to the last time was at 19. I didn't stop hurting myself at 19. That was the last time I tried to end my life, though. But it was an addiction. It was something that it plagued me, like, drinking or pornography, whatever your addiction is. It was my addiction. And the last time that I did it, I was 20 years old. We had just gotten married. We got married in April, the year I turned 20. And I was sitting in the bathroom at our house. I was on the toilet, not like using the toilet. I was just sitting on the lid. And I had just finished, what I was doing. And I knew what we were going to talk about when he got home from work that day. We had already talked about it on the phone, that we were going to talk about wanting to have our first baby. And I looked at myself in the mirror, knowing that that was the conversation we were going to have shortly after this. And I said, I never, ever want my child to feel about themselves the way I feel right now. And the only way to fix that is to feel better about myself and to be her or his example. I didn't know at the time. Be their example and love myself so that they can love themselves. I never did it again. Never. The day I put it down that day, I never picked it back up. I'm so grateful for that. And it took the knowing that I was about to bring another person into this world to remind me just how much I was worth. I was going to be her mother. The person that she looked to for every situation in her life. How does mom deal with this? What did mom teach me? What did mom say? When stuff like this happens. And and when she gets older, and all three of them, when they get older, I'm not going to hide who I used to be and what I did. Because what's the point of that? I'm going to be open and honest so that they never have that shroud of mystery over, addiction in and of itself and self-hatred that they may feel. But I'm going to do everything I can while they're too young to, know that and process that and deal with that burden. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they see me love myself so that they in turn love themselves. That was a big part of me forgiving me, was knowing that I was trying to do better. But if you don't take the time to forgive you, that seed of bitterness towards yourself is going to reflect on how your children treat themselves. Just know that. Just know that when you look at yourself and you say that you're so stupid, do you want to hear that come out of your child's mouth? I don't. It was enough to scare me straight. And we talked about, having our first baby when he got home. Are we ready? What do we want to do? Here's the plan. All the while, he saw my arms. He knew. I don't know how vividly you remember that day, but I'll never forget it.
I do remember it. I wouldn't say vividly, but I remember it.
And we got pregnant.
No, you got pregnant.
Well, the couple gets pregnant. Not long after. I spent the 9 months that I was pregnant in a very deep depression because I was jonesing for the addiction, Even though I had decided I'm not going to do this anymore, the temptation doesn't go away, guys. It doesn't. The devil in your life is going to do everything to make you fall again. Because do not get it twisted. If you have a problem with alcohol, with drugs, with pornography, with overeating, it's because you hate yourself. And only you and God can figure out why. He already knows. But until you pray and ask him to reveal it so that you can forgive yourself, you're going to continue hating yourself. And that addiction, it's not going anywhere. Doesn't matter how many 10-step programs you do. If you don't forgive you and you still hate yourself, it's still going to be there. The day I decided I didn't hate myself anymore, I never picked it back up. I didn't say I was never tempted again. The minute that my first baby girl was put in my arms, the temptation faded forever. Has never come back. Ever, 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 ever. Now, have there been times where I've sat down, you know, and I felt like the ache in my arms, like it was like, you know, it's like an itch you want to scratch. Like, yeah, that's been there, but I've never been tempted to do anything about it. It's come in times I was stressed or depressed or angry, and it was like, gosh, because for those of you who don't understand, like my aunt, you know, that's never been her thing, you know, self-harm. She's been through her life. I'm telling you, she's a strong woman, but she has never, because she had been caused so much pain, she didn't understand why anyone would ever want to hurt themselves. And so when I explained it to her, she was actually able to take that. She has a ministry at the jail where she ministers to the girls there, and some of them were dealing with that. And she was able to take what I told her to them so that she could empathize or sympathize. I forgot which one. She could do that with them more so that it could further her ministry. And so she was very grateful for that. And I was glad to be able to share it. So I'm going to share it with you now just in case you don't understand why someone in your life may be hurting themselves. There are a few different reasons, and I think I felt them all. Number one, it's about control. If there are things in their life or your life making them feel out of control, or somebody is oppressing them with so much control that they feel like they don't have the power to make their own decisions, that is a decision they get to make. They're already hurting anyway. I was already so full of hurt anyway. I was like, at least this hurt, I can see it. I can feel it. It's tangible. It's not in here eating me up. It's a tangible hurt that I get to control how much it is, how deep it is, when it stops, when it starts, where exactly I feel it. I get to do that. That's on me. My control. It's all me. Because other people were making me feel like I had no control and I had no say. And of course, the other part that I put in there was that when you can't see the pain, it somehow it hurts even more. Like if you have a itch on your foot so badly that you can't stand to do anything but scratch it, and then the pain feels better. You can't do that with internal pain. So the only thing I could do was deflect it with physical pain. And somehow it helped the inner tension release. Because that's what happens. Just like when alcoholics take a drink, their brain suddenly doesn't feel so stressed anymore. Or when people who are addicted to cigarettes, when they take a smoke, the first sound you hear when they go is, it's like they're breathing all that stress away.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, he smoked like real cigarettes for a long time, and we both, you know, used a vape for a long time because that was cool at some point. And it's like you just breathe all that stress out. And I mean, you can, if you want to, you can talk about that because I know you've dealt with the alcohol and cigarettes and.
Yeah, well, I never dealt with alcohol like that, but I didn't.
It was a small stint in your life, but it was an issue.
Not really. There was, don't get me wrong, there were times where I drank way too much, like way past unhealthy. Like I remember at 18, I think I was 18 years old. We were in the Bahamas. And there's like, so.
And it's legal there, guys. At 18, you can drink in the Bahamas.
We went to, there's like this little sports bar in Freeport, in the Freeport area in the Bahamas. And like, it's a really famous sports bar. And you can go up there and like, I asked for 3 shots. And I just threw them. One was mango rum. And then there was a couple other types of rum. And I just threw them all back in succession and slam, slam, slam. And my dad just looked at me Well, that's what he said. He was like, "You're gonna die of liver cancer." Like, that's all he said.
That's what you want to hear at 18 when you're drinking for the first time.
But no, that wasn't the first time. That was the thing, and I think that was the realization he had, because I had already been to JJ's party at that point.
Oh yeah, don't call him out like that.
Don't nobody know who he is?
There's one person that we know watches this podcast that knows who he is.
Yeah, and he knew I was there.
Oh, true. Okay. Anyways.
So, and then there was when I started working in law enforcement and I was living by myself and my life sucked.
He was with a woman who was not good to him. It wasn't me, because we had parted ways, because he wanted to be with me and I said no, because again, I still hated myself and I didn't think anything good and awesome could happen to me, or I would just screw it up. So I was like, better to push him away so that he's not miserable like I am. Lo and behold, he was, because we weren't together like God's plan.
My life consisted of me working 12 hours a day in a jail with rapists, pedophiles, murderers, and coming home with all that negativity from a place like that, plus the negativity that I had. My life literally consisted of me sitting in a chair, drinking a 24-pack, and passing out watching, like, Cheers or something like that.
Mind you, he was like 2 feet from the TV. He had a comfortable couch, and he put...
Ironically, this is the TV right here.
Ah, yes.
This is it. So I've had this thing with me since I moved out on my own, and it has just been... We've been through so much together.
Him and that TV.
And now I'm putting him to good use as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, God even redeems the TVs in your life that you passed out drunk in front of. But the point is, we go through it in different ways, whether it's hurting yourself, whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, porn, or food. I mean, guys, no crash diet is going to help you if you don't love yourself. Intermittent fasting. Let me get on my soapbox for a second here. Intermittent fasting. Okay? I know people are like, it's going to break my food addiction and it's going to help me lose weight and help my blood sugar. If you don't love yourself, it is pointless. It is fruitless. It will not work. You will slip. You will fall. And the only way to love yourself is to learn how God loves you and to accept that love. That's the only way. Now, to end this, like I said, God told me to, so I'm going to do it. You're not always happy about the things God tells you to do, but you got to do them with an open heart, and He'll bless you for them. And I'm not looking for a blessing here on earth. I'll take my blessing in heaven if this just touches somebody. I wrote a poem when I finally forgave myself. Now, mind you, I told you I stopped hurting myself at 20 years old before we ever had our first baby, before I ever got pregnant with her. But I didn't truly forgive myself until I was in labor with my second child. I was 20 when I stopped. I was 23 when I had my second baby.
Which is the one that, if you guys have seen
the threshing floor.
Yeah, if you've seen the threshing floor, she's the one that
she's
kept
in the
popping
background.
in and out.
I love them all so much. Each pregnancy taught me something about myself. Now, with Meredith, it taught me to stand up for myself, which is something I never did because I hated myself. But the way the doctors treated me, which is why I'm a birth doula now, because the way the doctors treated me, the nurses, the whole hospital experience and my labor experience, it was horrible. And I had to learn to speak up. So it taught me strength, my own inner strength that I didn't know I had. And it grew from there. And with Lydia, my second, my pregnancy taught me to love myself, because I was watching Meredith grow up and I was like, I've got to learn. It was my first time loving myself. I mean, like I said, 6 years old, the hatred started. So it was my first time vividly actually learning how to love myself. And then with my third, my beautiful home birth baby, Susanna, it taught me patience. Patience because it was my home birth. So I wasn't induced for the first time. And because when our beautiful baby came into the world, it was 3 minutes before she took her first solid breath. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry out. I couldn't even take a breath myself. All I could do was pray and wait.
It didn't help the fact that she came out
Blue. 3 minutes. The midwives did an amazing job. Don't let that scare you away from home birth, because if you get a midwife who's trained and who knows how to deal with these things and knows when they need to call for help too, you're in good hands. You're in great hands. And my midwife worked on her and was about to say, okay, we need some help, because she was taking little breaths, like, so she wasn't not breathing at all, but she wasn't going.
She was breathing in. She wasn't breathing out.
And she didn't cry. She couldn't cry. She was blue. If
She
it
don't
had
have that problem now.
No, she's loud and proud. She just turned 1. She's perfect. They all are. But it taught me patience. So every pregnancy taught me something. But when I was in labor with Lydia, it was the first time that I took charge of that birth experience. And I was still induced because she was late and I had, a issue. My blood was too thin, things happen. But I did a gentle induction. I didn't get Pitocin at all to speed up labor. I let them do the cervix softening and whatnot. And then I was like, no, I'm doing the rest of this myself. You're just going to have to wait. And they were like, okay, well, we'll give you until 12 o'clock lunchtime tomorrow, and then we'll have to start Pitocin. Guys, she was born at 12:36. It was awesome. Never had to get it. Anyways, but while I was in labor with her, I was walking the hallways, and I wrote this poem when she was about a week old, reflecting on that process that I went through. Oh my gosh, is it really after 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yes.
How long? What time are we at? How much
We
time?
are at a little over an hour and a half.
I'm sorry. I told you I was going to keep it at an hour. But
Don't make no difference to me. That's the beautiful thing about being independent, is we go as long as we need.
And we have to do this in the dead of night because we have to get all our children asleep first, or they're going to scream and run around and just be children. I'm not mad at them for that. I just work around it.
Oh,
But
yeah, I already
anyways,
told them about how when the news show was premiering, they were all in there jumping off that bucket onto the bed.
oh yeah.
So, all 4 of them.
So I talk in this poem about, how I felt about myself growing up, and then how I felt when my husband asked me to marry him, and then how I felt pregnant with my first. I talk about the epidural I got with my first. I had 2 natural labors after this epidural because it messed me up physically pretty bad the first time. But then I talk about the rest of it is me going through labor and then after labor. So I just want to share it with you because this is how I healed from hating myself. So if you have to do something like this, write it on paper after you've prayed and asked for God's help and his guidance and his revelation as to what you are holding on to. Find your outlet, whether it be just talking to a therapist or somebody in your life, or if it's writing poetry, or if it's writing a song, or if it's painting something, or, even just, finding like a therapy animal. Mine is chickens. Like I talk about my chickens a lot. I love them. Watching them click around in the yard and doing their thing and, collecting eggs and letting them free range. It's my therapy. And playing in my garden in the dirt. That's when I have my quiet time, when I find the little happiness in life, just watching a chicken be free, or watching, beans or tomatoes grow in the garden. It's where I find my peace in my brain, where I'm able to talk to myself. So find your outlet. It's so important. So here's my poem. It's called Healing Pain. And it's a little bit lengthy, but I think it's important for you to hear, even though it's not eloquent. I'm not a great poet. It's just for me. I've never shared it with anybody except my husband, but God told me to, and I'm obeying. It says, I cut you up, I called you names, you made me sick at best. Every day was the school of life, and the mirror was the test. You'd think my love for you would grow because he said I do. It did a bit, I must admit, but there's still so much to do. The first child you carried, perfect in every way. I punished myself as I always do for not handling the pain. The needle came, jammed in my spine, my brain screamed, this isn't right. Muscles burning, fear grabbed my throat, I swear I saw the light. Next time around, things will be different. Those words echoed off the wall. No one to hear me because no one cared. I felt myself begin to fall. I began to see your inner strength, though it couldn't be reached. The chips were down and time was up, and you chose to be weak. He said to me, let's have another. Oh joy, another chance to fail. One more time, it'll be just fine, if I live to tell the tale. The day came, and I was surprised. You were doing so well. Maybe you did have what it takes, but only time could tell. Seconds, minutes, hours, the endless ticking of the clock. I refused to give up. I walked the halls. Even the nurses were in shock. In the silence between the pain, I had a talk with you. It was time to say I'm sorry for all I had put you through. 23 years of hate, no plan for it to end, but with every burning, crippling pain, my soul began to mend. Time to push, no going back, don't let me down, come on. I feel you giving up again, fight through it, you are strong. I heard that beautiful little cry and knew the work was done. The easy job was over, the hard stuff had just begun. The mirror was there right in my room, daring me to look. No makeup on, my hair a mess, but that look was all it took. You were tired, and it showed, red eyes and puffy face, but where once had stood a scared, weak girl, a warrior took her place. I learned to love you always through the sunshine and the rain, and I shout never-ending thanks to God for that wonderful healing pain. And that's it. That's the poem that God told me to share with y'all. That was how I healed and how I learned to love myself. And the pain that for once I wasn't controlling, it was physical pain that I didn't control, that I didn't cause, other than, don't cry because I'm going to cry. Other than, I chose to have her, and I knew the pregnancy and the labor was coming and causing me pain. I didn't cause that. I couldn't control it. I was in God's hands completely and totally, and because of that, I had never felt more free. And that pain healed me so much. And that was at 23. I'm 26 now. I've had 3 years to love myself freely with abandon. Love myself in a way that I never knew I could. Forgive yourself, guys. There is a life to live. God wants us to enjoy this time doing His work. And He loves us so much. He doesn't want to see us hate ourselves. Whatever you've done to yourself, whatever you've done to others, forgiveness is waiting for you. It's there so that you can turn right around and love on you. Now, don't feed into the lies that loving on yourself means buying yourself something shiny whenever you feel bad, or getting your hair and your nails done once a week, or getting massages and going into debt, doing nice vacations, or getting yourself the best car. That's not love. It's not. It's like, and it's okay to like yourself too. You need to. And if getting your hair done makes you feel good and you enjoy the experience of going and you have the money to do it, go. Or get your nails done. It's not my thing. I used to be taking every year to get a pedicure on my birthday. I hate getting a pedicure. I don't like strangers touching my feet. I don't. And I went every year anyway because, it made my family happy. It made my mom and my sister and my grandma, it made them happy. So I went for them. Finally I had to say, I don't like pedicures. It's not how I choose to love on myself. And I'm still accused of not loving myself enough because I don't get pedicures, or because I don't buy myself X, Y, and Z. That's not how you love on yourself. It's how you like yourself. And if you have the money and you're not going into debt and you want to do it, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying if that's not the way you feel you express love or even express like to yourself, you don't have to. That's the world's lie, that it's something that you can only attain through buying things or doing things for yourself. You know how I love on myself? I wake up early in the mornings. Sometimes I make myself a cup of tea. I go outside. I sit with my chickens. I sit in my garden. I pray. I come back in and I have my quiet time with God. That's how I love on myself. I understand that I have 3 kids and my life is chaotic and I need that quiet time in the mornings. I love on myself by getting up early and spending that quiet time. I love on myself by, doing things that I enjoy with my children. Taking them for walks at the lake, around the water, or, taking them places that they enjoy and watching them laugh and giggle and play, and I play with them. That's how I love on me. Only you and God know how you love on you, and you might not know it yet because you don't love yourself yet. Give yourself the time to figure it out. I hope this has ministered to your guys' souls and you've learned something from it. Like I said, if you need some more help and you don't want to talk about it publicly, he put the email up there. And, just put me in the subject if you don't want him to read it, or if you don't care, just put, here's what I'm talking about. Here's who I am. And, we'll work through it and you will get an email back. Go ahead. Give me your best shot. Give me a situation where you're like, I don't know how to do this forgiveness thing for something this evil. Because I know that the evil in this world is rampant, and the things that have been done to some of you, it would, I know it would blow my mind and make me sad, make me cry. Nobody is downplaying the things that have been done to you. Nobody is saying that, just forgive. It's not that big a deal. It is. I'm not downplaying it. And I know that you might need help to get through it. Go ahead. Tell me anything. Because if you don't have anybody else in your life, I'll be that person. Guys, it's been wonderful. I'm glad I re-recorded this because I feel the peace now that God is telling me that I've done and said what he wanted me to. So I hope you've learned something. I know, parts of it were graphic and I shared a lot with you. I'm sorry, if it offended you in any way or you didn't want to hear it. But I really enjoyed being able to share my story for the first time. And I feel like I've taken another step in my own personal healing today. Because we're always growing. Until we see Jesus, we're going to keep growing. We'll reach perfection when we see him and when we're with him. But I hope lots of you guys watch this, and I'll join you in the chat when it airs. What, tomorrow? Next day? Next week?
Tomorrow.
Obviously
Sunday night.
Obviously, when y'all are
5 p.m.
seeing this, it'll already be Sunday night, but
yeah,
it's tomorrow for me. But I'll be in the chat with you when it airs. Go ahead, talk to me. I love it. My next study coming up after this one is going to be called More Undignified Than This, and it's going to be a guide to biblical worship. We're going to be looking a lot at David and the ways he worshiped and the ways the Bible tells us are okay to worship, and a lot of them, hint, hint, don't involve standing there in unison and raising your hands when the pastor tells you to. Just to go there. Nothing wrong with raising your hands, but doing it on cue, from the pastor, that's not the Holy Spirit moving. That's a congregation, doing what they're told. We're going to look at biblical worship in More Undignified Than This, which will be my next segment whenever God tells me it's time. It might be next month, but it's coming. So that's all from me.
So before we close out, for those who whether you've just stumbled upon this by accident, or if you're seeing this, you're still in the church, you're learning that, maybe they haven't been explaining everything the way they're supposed to. This is for you. because you're never going to understand the healing of forgiveness until you understand this. And this is Isaiah 53. Who hath believed our report? And to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall go up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of a dry ground. He hath no form or comeliness. And when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows, and acquainted with grief. And when we hid, as it were, our faces from him, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he hath borne our griefs, and carried our sorrows, and yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. It is only through the suffering and the pain that Jesus took for you that you can be healed.
And it doesn't say will be healed. You are healed. It's right there for you to receive when you're ready. It's already there. You can have it whenever you want it. Guys, the only reason that we know that it's possible to forgive the evil done to us is because Jesus forgave the evil done to him. Look at God gave us the whole earth. He gave us everything we needed, down to giving us his son, and look what was done to him.
We're about to go more into that.
He was talked about behind his back and to his face. He was chastised. He was physically, mentally abused.
Hold on.
He was spiritually tested when he fasted in the desert. I mean, the devil himself, Satan himself, came to God's face, Jesus' face.
Matthew 27, verse 24. When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but rather a tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. Then answered all the people and said, his blood be on us and on our children. Then he released Barabbas unto them. And when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the common hall, and gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers. And they stripped him, and put on him a scarlet robe. And when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it upon his head, and a reed in his right hand, and they bowed the knee before him, and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit upon him, and they took the reed and smote him on the head. And after that they had mocked him, they took the robe off of him, and put his own raiment on him, and led him away to crucify him. And as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name, and him they compelled to bear his cross. And when they were come unto a place called Golgotha, that is to say, a place of a skull, they gave him vinegar to drink mingled with gall. And when he had tasted thereof, he would not drink. And they crucified him, and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture they did cast lots. And sitting down, they watched him there, and set up over his head his accusation written, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. And there were two thieves crucified with him, one on the right hand and the other on the left. And they that passed by reviled him, wagging their heads and saying, Thou that destroyest the temple and build it in 3 days, save thyself. If thou be the Son of God, come down from the cross. Likewise also the chief priests mocked him with the scribes and elders, said, He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in God, let him deliver him now, if he will have him. For he said, I am the Son of God. The thieves also, which were crucified with him, cast the same in his teeth. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And some of them stood there when they heard it, said, This man calleth for Elias. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink. The rest said, Let be. Let us see whether Elias will come to save him. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was ripped in twain from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the holy city, and appeared unto many. And this is the part that makes me break down more than anything else. Now when the centurion and those that were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake and those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, Truly, this was the Son of God. And Jesus did all of this for our transgressions and our iniquities. And yet we can't let go of, yes, some of us have been through horrible things, but we weren't spit upon by the people that we created. We were not mocked by the people that we placed on this earth to give us worship. And then some of us, we just refuse to let go of things that are so petty and worthless when push comes to shove.
It's not worth eternal separation from him, guys. Whatever it is, it's not worth it.
And the reason that you won't be forgiven if you don't forgive is because it's blasphemy to the Holy Spirit. It's blasphemy.
He forgave these people who did these awful things to him.
He said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
And you can't forgive. I've been there. I know how hard it is to forgive and how good it feels to hold on to the unforgiveness. But is it worth eternally being away from him?
And is it worth spitting in his face again?
Ugh.
Just to hold on to what's going on? I promise. There's nothing too big. Jesus died for it all. Mm-hmm. And what's really, like, and to some of you, this is going to be scary. Jesus died to forgive what was done to you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the only way that these people that have done us wrong will ever see the love of Jesus is for us to forgive them, even when they haven't asked for it.
And to treat them nicely and with forgiveness and with love. It's going to blow their minds, guys. It really is. And they're going to start asking questions. How can they be like this? And they're going to want some of that. Your greatest witness is your ability to forgive. That's your greatest witness. Because so many of us have seen it in the world. They like to hold on to these little things, and they like to gossip about them and have drama and stir the pot. Your greatest witness is to be set apart from that because you forgave and you're not talking about that person and you're not dragging it up and you're not staying angry and you moved on and you have peace that can only come from God. And I don't think there's anything else to be said.
Nope. I think we'll end it there. We're coming up on 2 hours, and
Yeah.
But
guys,
I'll go for 5 if that's what it takes.
If that's what it takes. As long as y'all let me stop and get a snack, I will keep going. Thanks for joining us, guys. I mean, what you just, heard in the last 5 minutes, not planned. The Holy Spirit came into this room and said, I need them to hear this. And he was the vessel, and he let it flow through him. Straight from the Holy Spirit, guys. He wanted you to know that today. So, most of what we said wasn't planned. I came with a general idea and said, God's going to fill the gaps because he always does. We hope you are having a beautiful time watching this. You're learning something. You may be crying right along with us. And we'll see you next time.